Day one saw the performance from Sprinter Sacre, and what a performance. Some doubted the horse would get up the Cheltenham Hill. They were wrong, and the odds offered in the morning by the likes of Paddy Power of evens turned out to be particularly generous, I thought, and I really enjoyed watching Sprinter Sacre come home that easy, and one to watch out for next year for those who like to bet anti-post. Quavega was the winner for Ireland, as expected that day. Ireland didn't have a great Cheltenham Festival for once, possibly due to the ground being firmer than Irish horses are used to running on. And that, of course, paid for Hurricane Fly, I think, the ground and the speed with which they went off in that particular race. It was a very fast-run race early on, and Hurricane Fly seemed to struggle with that pace. Day two was the big winner for us, of course, Un Artiste, which came home at a SP price of 40 to 1. Some members were on at 50 to 1. I know of one member who was watching it in a pub, cheering it on, and to the amazement of the other people in the pub as to why he'd got on that particular horse at 50 to 1. Well, as I said on the email that morning, the horse was dropping in grade. And I'm surprised the bookies had it at such a big price, not least because Nicky Henderson had already had the winners they had had that day, so his horses were clearly firing in. So Un Artiste was the big win for us of the day, 33 to 1 when I emailed members, 40 to 1 SP, and during the morning 2 or 3 bookies had it at 50 to 1, an extraordinary price and a really good win for members of the selection service. As was Simon Sigg, which was one of my bankers for the meeting, 3 to 1 with William Hills in the morning, if memory serves me correct. Extraordinary price, which many members took advantage of. And I'm not a big fan of betting anti-post, looking ahead a year, but I think Simon Sigg is one to watch out for in next year's anti-post betting. I think I wasn't alone in thinking that day 3 was the day the Cheltenham Festival this year really came to life, sprang into life. We knew that the field for the Ryanair Chase was a strong one before the off, and so it proved. It was an excellent race and a thrilling finish, which saw us have a 1-2 on the selection service. The each-way pick was the redoubtable Alberta's Run, ridden by Tony McCoy, a horse that had won this race in the previous 2 years, and that was the each-way selection mailed to members at odds of 10 to 1 the night before. And the win selection was Riverside Theatre, which again the night before was a bigger price of 5 to 1. It came home as the winner in a thrilling finish, much shorter odds than the 5 to 1 I pointed up. The horse, which is part owned by the actor Jimmy Nesbitt, didn't look like it was going to win at one point, but did come up that hill well and overtook Alberta's Run in a thrilling finish. Big Bucks was the star of Thursday, a record 4th World Hurdle, and this great horse from the Paul Nicholls yard proved the doubters wrong yet again. I fail to understand why there are any doubters. Yes, it had a harder finish this time, bit of a challenge laid down, but slipped into an extra gear. Superb ride from Ruby Walsh, as one would expect. And the odds on course of evens, astonishing. It went to evens 2 years ago, I recall. 5 to 6 widely available on the internet before the off this year. To my mind, should be a much shorter price. 4th World Hurdle. This is some horse. And I don't get why some people don't have confidence in it. Also on Thursday, we could well have seen a Gold Cup winner of the future in Sir de Champs, winning the Deuce and Novices by some margin and in very impressive fashion, I thought. This was the most impressive horse at the festival. Bookies, William Hills had it priced up straight after winning that race at 12 to 1 for the Gold Cup 2013 on the anti-post market. That 12 to 1 quickly went. The best price you can get as I speak for Sir de Champs to win the Gold Cup next year is 8 to 1, and it looks a pretty good thing to me. There were probably 4 ones that got away, bets that shouldn't have slipped through my hands this year, and 3 of them came on day 1, which wasn't a good start. Cinders and Ashes, which I'd scribbled down sometime in February as one to watch out for at the festival. That won the very first race of this year's Cheltenham Festival, and at a good price. Now, you can study form too much sometimes, and when I saw that Cinders and Ashes' previous win had come on heavy ground at Haydock, and the previous wins before that on softer going, I put a line through Cinders and Ashes. That was obviously, now, with the benefit of hindsight, clearly a mistake. Very often horses that do well on heavy ground at Haydock do not take kindly to better ground, which was the case at Cheltenham, and by better I mean not as soft. No rain in Cheltenham for an eternity. They'd watered the course, but clearly the ground was on the good side of good to soft. I didn't think Cinders Ashes would like that, but we know in future that this horse can run pretty much on any ground, and it got the Cheltenham Festival off to a great start, although I was busy kicking myself as it came past the post. Another one got away, and that was that Rock on Ruby from Paul Nicholls should have been my each way selection in that race. I went for something bolder, but Rock on Ruby, good word out of the Paul Nicholls stable for many weeks now about this one. Superb ride by Ruby Walsh, won at 12-1, and that's the second one that got away on day 1. I'm ashamed to admit that Hump Ball, a horse that's returned to so much profit this season with so many wins, I turned my back on it come the last race on day 1 of Cheltenham. I didn't think it could carry that much weight up that Cheltenham Hill and win yet again. I was wrong. Others were right. I remember Jim McGrath tipping it up on Channel 4. He was right to stick with it. I was wrong not to stick with it. Amazing story, Hump Ball. A horse that's been raced several stone since the winning run began earlier in the season. I'm glad we've profited from that horse. I'm glad that a small horse race owner like Anthony Knott has enjoyed such success with it, and it was good to see in the winners' enclosure that there was handshakes and pats on backs and smiles between Anthony Knott and the handicapper who he'd taunted all season long by saying, "You'll never catch up with this horse, you'll never stop this horse from winning." That was good to see. I guess the fourth and last one that got away was Synchronised, the winner of the Gold Cup, in so much as in my email to members I'd said that this was a good each-way selection at a price of 14-1 the night before. That was before Price-Wise in the Racing Post tipped it up overnight, at which point the price predictably shrank. I did say that this horse would stay and that members should consider getting on each way, but I was wrong not to offer it as my each way selection, and believe me, I wish I had. For me, the death of Garde Champetre was the lowest point of the festival. One of 2 horses to die in the cross-country race. A course that hadn't been watered, unlike the rest of the courses, and this race is normally run in mud, frankly, and heavy going. When you watch the cross-country race every year, the jockeys are normally mud splattered, and the race contains horses that do like softer going. So questions have to be asked as to whether that race should have taken place. If the course cannot be watered, the cross-country course, and the going is not soft, I would question the future of this race. I love the race. Some people don't. Some people think there is no place for the cross-country race at Cheltenham. I disagree. I think it's a great race to watch, but it wasn't this year. The death of Scots Irish and Garde Champetre, which had won the race so many times before, was horrific. And whether you blame those who run the course, or you question the judgment of those who own the horses as to whether they should have been running, that's up for debate. But I think the very future of the cross-country races is up for debate. I don't understand. There will be a reason, I'm sure. Perhaps the very length of the course. I'm not quite sure I understand why that course cannot be watered, but it was not, and the going was too firm for some of them. That's not to take anything away from Balthazar's King, which was a superb winner of the race, but by then, for me, the cross-country race had been spoilt, and sympathies go to the connections of both horses that died, along with the other horses that died at this year's Cheltenham Festival. But I really did feel for Nina Carberry, the jockey of Garde Champetre, for whom she has ridden this horse to victory so many times, and for the stable girl who looked after Garde Champetre, who was distraught afterwards, and for all connections. That was the loss of Garde Champetre, definitely the lowest point of the festival for me. I think we're very fortunate that we're not sitting here talking about a disaster at the Cheltenham Festival, and that came on Wednesday when wishful thinking crashed, fell at the fourth fence, what was the fourth fence, and crashed through the barrier, with Richard Johnson, the jockey, going in another direction, and with a regular photographer at the course, being injured by the falling horse. There were several spectators behind that fence which collapsed, behind the rail I should say, which collapsed, and I think that whilst it's a great thrill to be so close to the action, the authorities at Cheltenham and other courses are going to have to look at how close the spectators can be. I think Cheltenham Festival this year escaped some seriously bad headlines by about that much. There's a danger that the events and the Queen Mother Champion Chase on Wednesday will be swept under the carpet. I'm sure that's what those who run racing would like to happen. There shouldn't be. Not just the fall and the incident and the spectators being so near to the rail and the near death that was avoided, but why the cock-up happened at that fence once the horses had completed a full circuit and come back to the fence where that incident happened. Remember, this is now the last fence in the race, so you have two jockeys coming towards the last fence, unsure of whether they're supposed to jump it or not. You can see the pictures. People on the course, down on the course, first blocking off, boarding off the entire fence all the way along, then somebody instructing them to take some of those boards away so that only half or part of the fence is blocked off. You've got a man stood, in my opinion, too far back with a checkered flag, waving his flag at the jockeys. What are the jockeys meant to think? Are they meant to jump the fence or not jump the fence? But why has it taken a full circuit of the course for that not to be sorted out? I don't understand why they're using such low-grade technology as boards and men with flags in this day and age of 2012. But the indecision, and clearly, as Steve Dennis says in his article, the wrong decision was made by those down on the course. So much so that the two horses come to the final fence. One jockey on the outside wants to jump it, the other doesn't know whether to jump it or not, blah 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 blah. We'll never know, the truth being, we'll never know whether Size in Europe would have won that race or whether Finian's Rainbow would have gone on to win anyway. We'll never know. It's quite possible Finian's Rainbow would have won anyway, although the jockey of Size in Europe, who then subsequently got a 6-day ban, says that last fence, or lack of, cost him the race, that the incident that happened at the last fence cost Size in Europe victory. Truth be told, we'll never know. That's not really the important issue, even for those of us who were backing the one who got beat. It's that this sort of cock-up shouldn't happen in this day and age at a festival, at a racecourse as big as Cheltenham, it's a prestigious festival. What on earth are the people doing running race thinking? And what were those people doing? Where were the instructions coming from? Who was responsible for telling those men who had put the warning boards up in front of the fence to take half of them away? Who was responsible for that? I thought it was sickening that certain racecourse authorities and officials were very quick to blame the jockeys, the two jockeys involved for that incident. lessons have to be learned. That must not happen again. Don't take my word for it, but I'll read you what Steve Dennis says in the Racing Post. He says, a decision was swiftly and correctly made that the fence should be bypassed. And that's right. Warning chevrons. Warning chevrons were placed across the whole fence and then astoundingly moved to a small section of the fence. Was it possible that someone believed this would make the situation A, clearer, and B, safer? It beggars belief that the answer to either of those questions can be yes. Richard Linley, the senior inspector of courses, made a considerable blunder by deciding to reposition the warning boards, yet no admission of culpability could be found in the debrief. Not that you would expect that, or such a concession from the British Horse Racing Authority. So we came to the final day, and of course the big story, the Gold Cup. Cordo Star being pulled up very early on. I was fascinated to hear A.P. McCoy say that he could see something was wrong with the horse fairly early on coming up the hill the first time, or the only time in the case of Cordo Star. And the AP said he turned to Ruby Walsh during the race and said, "You'll be pulling him up soon."
He's going to be pulled up. It's very disappointing. Cordo Star is being pulled up. The racing legend is being taken out of the race by Ruby Walsh, but still the crowd are cheering. They give him a round of applause. So much respect for a great horse. This isn't his. He's going having a look round there.
And sure enough, Ruby very wisely did. It seems that Cordo Star jumped the water jump, overstretched. Ruby felt as though something had twanged inside the horse. The horse certainly wasn't happy and was hurting inside because Cordo Star just went back and back and back through the field, and Ruby very wisely, who had been told by trainer Paul Nicholls that if anything was wrong to put it up, did just that. One of the members of a selection service got in touch with me in the morning and said, "Why is Price-wise, Tom Seagal in the Racing Post, why is he tipped up synchronised?" And I said, well, because the front two could get beaten. It would only take Cordo Star or Long Run to fall or to be pulled up, and the other to underperform, and it's wide open. It was a much more wide open Gold Cup, I felt, going into it than in previous years. And those words that I messaged to one of the members proved to be correct. Cordo Star is pulled up. Long Run, for whatever reason, didn't perform as it had done previously in the Gold Cup, and is clearly capable of doing so on its day. And so that left the race open for the master, for the champ, Tony McCoy on synchronised, which, as I've said, I wish I had tipped up as the each-way selection. I did think it would get placed, and was 14-1 the night before, when Price-wise, very wisely, tipped up synchronised to win. I thought it would get placed. Of course, it did much better than that. A great ride from, as the Racing Post calls, A.P. McCoy, the greatest. And whilst it was horrid to see Cordo Star pulled up, it was wonderful to hear the stands applaud him as he was pulled up and applaud him back. And if Cordo Star couldn't do it, for my mind, then the best outcome was that Tony McCoy, the greatest jockey of our time, would win the race after a week. He had a winner earlier on the Friday, but a week of near misses. So it was good to see him come home first. It was great to see Nicky Henderson overall be the champion trainer, and Barry Geraghty have so many good rides for Nicky Henderson, so many winning rides. And of course, who can forget the story of the stable jockey, the stable lad I should say, Connor, who won £1 million for a £50 bet on 5 Nicky Henderson horses that he knows, and some of which he looks after daily, mucks out and all that. And Connor won £1 million with Bet365. I'm led to believe the payout should have been more, that the £50 to win on those 5 horses would actually pay out at £3 million or more. But of course the terms and conditions with many bookies stress that the maximum payout on certain bets would only be £1 million. and you're meant to have checked the terms and conditions before you place your bet. Which of us do that, I wonder? Anyway, great result for Nicky Henderson's yard, all up really. The champion trainer and the head stable lad, Connor, who, well, he's now a millionaire, but says he'll still be mucking out. And that was one of the many good stories to come out of Cheltenham Festival 2012.